Welcome back to Dead Reckoning, the Human Life Expectancy channel. In this video, we'll explore what might happen to our personal lives as we live longer. Since time is the stage upon which we act out our lives, and because time regulates the phases of our lives, extending life expectancy will change our lives significantly. While no one knows exactly how, it's important to start considering what might happen and start planning for what lies ahead. In prior videos, we've already addressed that we'll be living longer, human reproduction will be revolutionized, and overall human fertility will likely fall. In this video, we'll focus on other ways in which our personal lives might change. So, under health, we'll consider two questions. How will the things that kill us change from today, and will we be healthy as we age? Under love and families, we'll address three more. Will we have more or fewer children? How will love, dating, and marriage change? And how will families change? We'll also consider how other aspects of our lives might change. What will work be like? What will education be like? What will retirement be like? We'll even consider how our thoughts might change. So let's start with our health. As we calculated in our Dead Reckoning video, overall death rates will be approximately half of what they are today, and that's fantastic news. How will we actually die in 2040? In our New Ways to Die video, we explored many new ways to die, from bioterrorism and weapons of mass destruction to the much smaller risks from misapplied genetic engineering. Also, if our predictions from our last video come to pass, mortality rates for communicable diseases and injuries should fall, and more of us will die from non-communicable diseases and accidents that result from our behaviors. It will increasingly become the case that you are as you do, or you die as you live. Mortality rates from communicable diseases will continue to reduce dramatically as vaccines and other immunological treatments advance. Non-communicable diseases should hold steady as slow-to-change bad behaviors, including smoking, drinking, excessive eating, and lack of exercise, are offset by new advances in treating cancer and heart disease. We'll likely see reductions in Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and there will likely be increased rates of neurological conditions, fatty liver disease, and diabetes. It's not completely clear what will happen to the rate of injuries over time. They'd be likely to fall as a percentage of total deaths as safety protocols continue to advance. In addition, since the majority of crimes are perpetrated by young men, violence and crime will likely decrease as the percentage of young men in the population decreases. On the other hand, as fewer people die from communicable diseases, the proportion that might die from injuries could go up. Next, what will our health be like when longevity is significantly extended? As we noted in our Curing Aging and Is It Wrong to Want to Live Longer videos, most people should remain healthy and want to live longer. We expect more active, productive years and fewer years of pain and disability. Still, the prevalence of, we'll call them civilization diseases, will likely increase. Chris Verberg, author of The Longevity Code, believes that these could include non-lethal but joy-sapping conditions, such as flat feet, back problems, joint injuries, gastric reflux, and depression. Other potential ailments are harder to predict. For example, recent epigenetic tests indicate that different parts of the body might age at different rates. Epigenetic studies show that breast and other types of tissues age faster, while the brain and still other types of tissues age more slowly. This means that it's possible that any rejuvenation from resetting the biological clock may not affect all cells the same way. Intuitively, it's hard to see how bones, joints, and other hard tissues could respond to treatments as quickly as soft tissues. What would it feel like to be in a body with young soft tissues but older hard tissues? We can only imagine. Even less well understood is what might happen to our brains as we age. We've already seen dramatic increases in Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. But even if we cure those diseases, important questions remain. Will our moods become more or less stable as we age? What will happen to mental illness? It seems likely that it will only gain in incidence and importance as we propagate ever more ideas and process ever more information. More on this later. How will our abilities to remember adapt to living longer? Will we run into limits to how much we can know and remember? So, while we will probably be living longer, healthier lives, new physical and mental issues could arise. It's definitely worth exploring potential new ailments in more detail. So, what could the impacts be on love and families? First, because families will have more time to grow, many of us will live to see great-grandchildren and even more generations of our families. Will we have more or fewer children? In our video, How Will Population Growth End?, we discussed that the exponential growth in the human population will likely end as women continue to choose to have fewer and fewer children. However, living longer and advances in IVF-PGD and other reproductive technologies will almost certainly allow more of us to have children later in life. This will be a boon to many women who wish to have children later in their lives. Removing this increasingly binding constraint will be welcome news for women and men who struggle to build their lives and careers prior to having children. The net of these two opposing effects is difficult to predict, but the answer depends on our collective desire to have children over the long term. Will we still want to have children? Or will the desire to have children be regarded as a vestige of our gene-driven past, which we've overcome? Of course, many and perhaps most of us will follow our desires and make conscious choices to have children as human life expectancy increases. But it's simply not known what impacts the treatments that end up extending HLE will have on our hormones, our gonads, and our desires. At one end of the spectrum, if we discover a true fountain of youth, hormones, gonads, and desires could return to teenage levels. At the other end, it's possible that more people might decide not to engage sexually. Might sex come to be regarded as an anachronistic vulgarity to be transcended? We've always fought the urge to reproduce. There are countless popular references that question and even mock our desire to reproduce. To name just a few, in 1982, George Clinton recorded The Atomic Dog that includes the lyrics, "Why must I be like that? Why must I chase the cat? Nothing but the dog in me." In 1996, Tina Turner's classic song asked, "What's love got to do with it?" In the HBO series Flight of the Conchords, the protagonists sing a song with the lyrics, quote, "You're the most beautiful girl in the room, depending upon the room," which makes a mockery of the conceit that is an inherent driver of human sexual selection. Should this be taken seriously? We think so. There are other indications that our desire to have children might be less as HLE increases. Let's start with the fact that older people are currently less physically able to reproduce. Women undergo menopause, and men's fertility reduces with age. As HLE extends, it's not yet clear whether the ability and desire to propagate will also extend or not. There's also the fact that over the last 100 years, fertility has fallen dramatically as HLE expanded and is now at an all-time low. But as we described in our How Will Population Growth End video, this could be due to inherent increases in wealth, education, urbanization, and other factors. Over time, we'll also likely get better at avoiding unwanted children, resulting in fewer births. Longer lives will give us more time to gain control over our natural desire to procreate. Our large and increasing use of birth control suggests that more and more people are gaining this control. The global market size for contraception was estimated at $38.4 billion in 2021 and is growing at almost 7% per year, which is much faster than the population, which is growing only at 1% per year. It's worthy of reflecting on just how unusual humanity's use of contraception is. While there are some very strange mating behaviors in the animal world, including mating plugs that glue a squirrel's vagina closed, Indian stick insects that mate for 10 weeks straight, honeybees' exploding testicles, and fig wasps that decapitate their lovers, no species except humans systematically practices birth control when surrounded by abundance. The only rational explanation is that our unique consciousness among animals gives us the gift of choice, and fewer of us are choosing to reproduce. So, how might living longer impact love, dating, and marriage? If we live longer, we'll have more time for all of these things. Again, the question will be, what will we choose? First, there is little doubt that humans will continue to love as they live longer. Since from an evolutionary perspective, love is a powerful survival mechanism that's successfully driven us to propagate our genes by having children, you might think that if fewer of us choose to propagate our genes and have children, love is heading for hard times. However, we think love will remain even as fertility drops for many reasons. First, Sexual attraction is only part of romantic love, and romantic love is one of many types of love, including love for children, family, brothers, sisters, and even pets. More broadly and philosophically, love is a choice we make that brings meaning and joy to our lives. Why would we ever choose not to love? Love is so ingrained in our psyches, lives, and societies that it's difficult to imagine it waning. Also, our brains evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to love, making this difficult to change even if we wanted to. The area of the brain where feelings of love reside is right above the area where feelings of hunger and thirst reside. Over eons, thirst and hunger have driven our short-term survival as individuals, while love has driven the long-term survival of our genes. This makes it highly unlikely that our ability to love will diminish or disappear as we age. Today, people certainly maintain their capacity for emotional love throughout their last days. Our bet is that we'll hold on to love even if the prime reason for its existence, the propagation of genes, weakens. More on this on our upcoming video on humanity's evolving objectives. Dating will also likely change. The number of years spent dating will likely increase, or even last through adulthood for some, and will be increasingly digitally enabled. Partner selection is also likely to become more sophisticated and data-driven. As individuals, we commonly have a good read on whom we're attracted to, less so for those who might be attracted to us. Artificial intelligence, AI, may become better and better at selecting compatible mates than even we are. On the other hand, digital dating might cause demand for very attractive mates, whether they're genetic or other types of celebrities, to skyrocket, reducing the demand for the rest of us. The criteria we use for selecting partners could also change as we live longer. It seems likely that we might give more emphasis to selecting mates based on their thoughts and behaviors, how they make us feel, and their ability to inspire us and engender new ideas versus their physical attributes and ability to procreate. Marriage could also be affected. The longer we live, the larger the traditional marriage promise of "till death do us part" becomes. This might make fewer couples willing to tie the knot. Also, since many people get married to have children, if fewer choose to have children, fewer will likely choose to marry. Perhaps these are some of the reasons why around the world marriage is currently declining and singles are rising. Living longer will also cause families to become less traditional. The size and number of families we choose to have could also change. Some will undoubtedly choose to have longer relationships in single families. These families will grow larger over the years and consist of children, parents, grandparents, and even multiple levels of great-grandparents. Others will want to have second and third families, which will increase the frequency of stepchildren and half-brothers and sisters. As this becomes more common, perhaps remaining stigmas against divorce will relax. Another likely consequence is that parents will continue to have children later in life. This could have numerous impacts, ranging from greater child welfare and education to greater potential for genetic abnormalities and greater importance of genetic screening and engineering. In addition, extended fertility could cause an increase in the age gap between siblings, increasing the incidence of brothers and sisters that are younger than children and blurring traditional generational divides. There could also be more single-parent families. In 2014, a survey found that only 46% of kids in the United States lived in a traditional nuclear family, with the rest living with parents who were remarried, single parents, or even neither parent. If rates of marriage fall, but liberal norms of reproductive choice continue, more of us might choose to have children out of wedlock. In the U.S., the percentage of children living with single parents increased from 9% in the 1960s to 28% in 2012. Since that time, the percentage has fallen back to 25% due to decreases in births out of wedlock. It's also possible that families will be less likely to live together. This would be a continuation of a long trend. During Roman times, the worst thing you could do to somebody, short of kill them, was to banish them from the community where their family lived. Why would anyone prefer to live away from the support of their entire family? Localized, multi-generational living arrangements were common up until the end of World War II, when the U.S. implemented the GI Bill, allowing 8 million veterans to obtain a college degree and join the middle class. For the first time, this allowed young parents to be able to afford living in nuclear families, instead of multi-generational living arrangements. Similar changes soon spread throughout Western societies. Today, many Western families are spread across multiple cities, if not countries. The new norm seems to start with the exact opposite question. Why would a 25, 50, and 75-year-old all want to live together? As we live longer, there will also be impacts on our work, our education, and our retirement. We'll likely need to work longer to pay for our longer lives, and for many, our longer retirements. People will likely have much longer careers and will have to reinvent themselves again and again. Individuals will likely have many different careers that might change with age. Perhaps the first job will involve more physical labor when young. Next jobs might involve gaining mental expertise in middle age. And finally, jobs that involve and exercise judgment will be more common when we're older. At the same time, careers are becoming more about services, questions, ideas, and judgment, and less about manufacturing and physical labor. Also, as we described in our video on artificial intelligence, many jobs will be replaced by technology and AI, and working with computers will be a major new source of employment. Another likely windfall of extended HLE is that we'll have more time to accumulate experience and get better at the things we do. This will result in advanced thoughts and capabilities from people of all specialties who become hyper-experienced. Just imagine what Einstein might have come up with had he lived a decade or more longer. It will also likely result in greater pay as our most productive years are extended. It's also possible that the need to work to survive may decrease over time. Futurists Peter Diamandis and Michio Kaku make a compelling case that food, water, energy, and many of the things we currently pay for will become abundant or cost little or nothing in the next 20 years. If that happens, it would greatly reduce the need to work to live as we do today. Also, because there will be larger externalities to people that fall through the cracks, for example, people committing crimes or rebelling if they don't get what they need to live, governments will increasingly find it to their advantage to provide these things. On the other hand, life will probably be more pay as you go. People will need to save more to support themselves far into the future. Any inheritance is likely to be smaller and to come later in life. How we think about education will also likely change as HLE extends. As people live longer, the value of education increases because they have more years to benefit from their education. As a result, learning will become a lifelong endeavor to support self-reinvention. The notion that you could study one field and then work in that field based on what you had learned will need to be updated. If you work 60 or even 100 years, you can have no expectation that what you knew at the beginning would be relevant at the end of that time. Of course, this depends on your field. Careers involving physical labor may be less subject to change than technological fields that rapidly evolve. In an increasing number of fields, this applies even to the 4 years it takes to get a typical college degree. Many fields change so much that if you study only what's known when you started, you could well be out of date by the time you graduate. Traditional universities are taking actions to remain relevant. They're forming accelerators for startup companies. They're developing closer partnerships with new technology companies. They're developing more self-driven curricula and web-based delivery options. They also have stronger alumni and education programs. There's a range of new universities and advisories that are springing up to meet this need. Khan Academy is a nonprofit with a mission to provide free, world-class education for anyone, anywhere. The Singularity Group was founded on the idea that exponential technology can give anyone, anywhere, the ability to create positive impact. They help to connect and empower the visionaries, the teachers, the technologies, the makers, and the capital to turn the world's greatest problems into the world's greatest opportunities. So, individuals will need to guide their own learning and curate their own knowledge. Retirement will also need to be redefined. People will retire later, and the period of retirement will likely be longer. Retirement for many will be more focused on fun and extending life expectancy and involve more physical activities. This will cause many businesses that serve the retired community to thrive. See our next video on commercial impacts of living longer for more. Living longer could even change how we think. It seems that there's a common trajectory to our thoughts as we age, albeit there's many exceptions. But broadly, as children, we tend to focus more on what we need, crying or otherwise signaling to parents to get what we need. As puberty hits, a surge of hormones takes over, and many of us experience strong urges to mate. As we get older and our cerebral cortex is fully mature, our brains have fewer neurotransmitters such as dopamine and serotonin, which drive enjoyment and motivation, than our younger brains did. For many, the drive to satisfy themselves gradually becomes less urgent, and many that are lucky enough to have their needs met start to consider working to strengthen their communities, nations, and humanity at large, and even other species. Instead of asking more self-serving questions such as, "What do I need?" older minds tend to ask, "What does the world need? Does the world need one more child, or better lives for those that are already living?" Of course, anyone at any age can free themselves from the bounds of their own needs and focus on society. And children actually do have a larger stake in the future than adults, no matter how long we live. But it seems plausible that in general, as we live longer, we might think less about mating, reproduction, and self-promotion and personal advancement, and more about ideas, legacy, and group advancement. More on this on our upcoming video on humanity's evolving objectives. If such changes in our thinking become more prevalent as HLE extends, the impacts on humanity and the globe could be profound. As we've discussed, the human population, which is driven by the fertility rate, which is increasingly dependent on women's choice, could vary widely. It's impossible to predict the many ways that millions of people willing and able to devote themselves to making lives better for the already living will impact our societies, ourselves, and the world. But it doesn't seem like a stretch to say that the lives might become even longer and better as a result. On the negative side, as people age, they may have longer to consolidate and expand their power and influence. Military dictators might extend their periods of rule and become more powerful and even more difficult to unseat. At a lower level, people in all fields might find it harder to fight the status quo as older, more entrenched players exert control. New ideas and innovation could suffer, slowing progress. We'll explore how our thinking might change in much greater detail in upcoming videos. In our next video, we'll explore how our businesses might change as we live longer. In the meantime, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the Human Life Expectancy channel to make sure you don't miss our next videos, and post comments for the topics you'd like to have us cover. Thanks for joining us. Till next time, as we say at Human Life Expectancy Inc., Hi Hua! Please, do what you can to help yourself and help us all to live longer.